Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna break down all of the automations that we use, everything that we use to kind of track all of our numbers. Make sure that, especially if you're selling high ticket, right? Like if you're selling high ticket, you're booking in appointments, you have sales calls, you have all of these things in place. You need to kind of understand how to track everything. And we do this by essentially having a operations channel. We have different automations in place for, the different things that goes on in the business. And then we also have a very detailed tracking sheet that tracks literally everything from sales, appointment setting, the ads that we're running, VSLs, everything. And it just puts all of the data into like a very nice to read place. So we know exactly what's going on, how many calls we're booking in, what's the qualification rate, how is the setter performing, what's the reply rate to messages, all of these like different, details that if you don't know them, it's going to be very difficult to essentially make any calculated decisions. And if you have to do all of this manually, it's just going to take too much time. So like I said, I'm going to show you how we do it, how to automate it, and essentially give you everything you need to set this up yourself. And the reason I'm making this video is because I got this message from a guy telling me or asking me how I set up this automation. So I was like, let me just make a video and kind of show you guys how we do it. And I'm going to show you all of the automations in detail, right? So like how we actually set these up, how it works, and essentially show you, like I said, everything that we do with tracking and stuff like that. But before I get into this, if you just want this automation, document, which I've just templatized all of our automations. So you can click on this, you can import this into your own Zapier account, and you can just make, duplicates of, our automations. So you don't have to like create all of these and set them up and stuff like that. Just DM me an IG, I'll send you this one, and you can just, copy paste everything that I'm about to show you in this video. So with that being said, let's get into it. But before I go into like the details, I just want to show you like the overview of how this works, right? So like I said, for us and for our clients and everything, we set up this operations channel for, each individual person essentially. So this is like, one of our clients and inside of the Discord. So we use Discord, you can use Slack as well. Doesn't really matter. The point is just having one centralized place where you have, everybody on your team. So this can be, editors, setters, closers, whatever you got going on, you would add them into here. And you can kind of like make different channels, open them up to different people and stuff like that. So it's very nice and clean. You can have everything in one place, all the communication and everything. But what I'm about to focus on in this video is the automation side of things, like what we actually automate and how it works. So if you just go into here, you can see we have a bunch of different channels. These, serve different purposes, but some of these are not automated. The ones in red are the ones that we automate, right? So as you can see here, booked calls, canceled calls, no-show, payments, end of day report, end of day reminder. So I'm going to show you this and essentially just break this down. So let's start with, end of day reminders and end of day reports. Essentially, like I said, if you have a team, if you have like, let's say setters and everything like that, you need to be able to track what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? So essentially what we do every day at 8 p.m., we send them a reminder to fill out the end of day report, which is this one. So every day they fill out this, essentially like a report about what they did that day, right? Like win for the day, hours worked, have you filled out the tracker? Have you done KPIs today? How well did you manage your time? How satisfied are you with your performance? And then after analyzing your day, what can, be improved on and what should you double down on? Like what actually worked well today? That's step one. And then step two is that they fill out the tracking sheet, which is going to include everything that has to do with, the stats for the day. So follow-ups, outbounds, how many inbounds they got, how many replies, how many calls they pitched, how many booking links they sent, qualifications, and DQ bookings, right? So this is basically what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then we are able to see this inside of here. As you can see with the setter tracking data, we can see exactly what's going on. So we can know if the reply rate is bad, we need to change the opener, for example. Let's say we send a shit ton of links, but nobody books in. Probably our pitch is bad, right? So these kinds of things. Or maybe, we book in too many DQ calls. We need to kind of do some changes to the qualification and stuff like that. So we're able to see exactly what is going on. But my point is, every day at 8 p.m., we send this reminder, they fill this out. And then once they fill this out, it sends us back an automation with the stuff that they filled in. So we can just every day check over kind of what the setter is up to. As you can see here, booked 5 calls today, 8 to 9 hours worked, filled out the tracker, yes, time management, satisfaction 5, performance 7, and then some details about kind of like what happened, what can be improved, stuff like that. So that's the first automation we have every day. We just send this to the setters, they fill this out. We get all the data from the appointment setting side of things, and we also get some information about the specific setter, like what they did that day. So you can also do this with closers. Let's say you have a closer, you can do the same thing, right? So the point is just having automations in place to make sure that they fill it out and essentially make sure that you get the data back so you can improve, essentially, see what happens, right? And the second point of this is all the calls, right? So booked calls, canceled calls, no-shows, and then we also have one section here called booked call information. So let me break this down. Essentially what happens is every single time we book a call, as you can see here, it comes up into our Discord server, like you can see here. So, new call booked, blah, blah, blah. So again, we just get the notification. Everybody gets notified on the team. We just booked a new call. And then we have all the information from the Calendly, like what they put into Calendly, essentially, the date of the call. And then we also have, as you can see here, the UTM source. And the UTM source is just a code that you have on the back of your calendar link or your landing page link, which is going to show you where they booked in from. So we have this code put to IGDM for the appointment setter. And let's say if you have multiple appointment setters, you can have IGDM setter 1, IGDM setter 2, stuff like that. So you can see exactly who is booking in calls. And as you can see here, we also have this for the YouTube video. So this guy booked in from the YouTube video. This guy's from India, so he's a DQ. But you get the point. We can see where he is booking from and which videos specifically get us the most revenue, which types of videos are actually getting us calls, qualifications, stuff like that. How we do this is we just have this code at the end of the link. So whatever your Calendly link is or whatever, you just put this, as you can see, question mark, UTM underscore source equals, and then whatever you put into after here on the equals is going to automatically come up in Calendly. So this is like a universal code. You don't need to do anything. Like you can just type this back at the back of your code and it's going to add this information into Calendly. And then we can use Zapier, which, like I said, I'm going to show you how we set this up to essentially get this information back into our Discord. After this happens, we also add this new lead, this new booked call into our CRM, right? So this is a CRM that we use for, again, like I said, everything, setting ads, VSL. But in this case, it would be the sales side, right? Because they just booked in a call. So we get all the information from Calendly to show up in here, right? Like the UTM source, the different form questions, their name, IG name, date of the booked appointment and date of the call. So like when did they book in and when is the call for? And then after this, the closer or whoever just comes in here and fills in, what happened on the call. And we are again able to track everything when it comes to the close rate, all of these things. And this automatically pops into this sheet. So we don't have to manually fill this out. It automatically happens every time we book in a call. And the same happens if somebody cancels a call, for example, then this would automatically put them into the canceled section, right? So it would automatically cancel them inside of the CRM. And we are again able to see, what the cancellation rate is, no-show rate, stuff like that. So that's basically what happens, after somebody books in a call. And then from here, if the setter books in the call, right, they fill in a booked call report. And the reason we do this is because we want to give the closer or whoever is doing the call like a recap of the conversation that the setter had with them on IG before the appointment. So essentially they fill out this. So like the name of the lead, their Instagram link, which is like a clickable link. So whoever is doing the call can just click on the link, go into the messages and read the conversation. And then also a bunch of like details that the setter has picked up throughout the conversation. So, we have Calendly questions, but you don't really get the full picture with just Calendly questions. So we get the setter to put in, for example, like this guy has been trying to, grow his brand for 2 years. He is struggling, blah, 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 blah. Kind of like information that the closer is going to want to know before the call. And then we send this inside of Discord again, like 5 hours before the call with the information. So that, the closer can kind of get a recap of the lead and some additional information to make sure that he has everything he needs to do a as productive sales call as possible. So that's what happens with the calls. And like I said, also the end of day reports, every day they fill this out and we get all the information kind of summarized. And then the last thing we do currently, I'm also going to show you some automations that we don't currently do, but some you can add into, let's say people don't close, they don't show, you can put them into email stuff like that. But in this case, it's the payments. So if a payment is failed or if a payment is successful, we also have this inside of Discord. So again, the closer, the setter, or not the closer, but the setter, and everybody on the call or everybody in the operation gets notified when somebody closes, right? So that's essentially how we do it. That's all automated, right? And then also, like I showed you inside of the tracking sheet, before I show you like the automations in detail, I think it makes sense to kind of show you how the sheet works in a little bit more detail. So I just showed you like the sales side, the setting side. So this is manual, right? Like the setter puts this information in manually, and then everything comes back into here so we can read the stats of setting and sales, the total finances, and we can also track this by date, right? So we can, pick, for example, what's the stats for June. We can just pick June 1st until June 31st, and we're able to see the stats for that month essentially. So we can kind of like track on a day by day basis or like a week by week basis, like the improvements of the stat. And then we also have ads. I would guess a lot of you have been running or are familiar with follower ads, DM ads, stuff like that. And as you probably know, it can be a little bit difficult to track the exact stuff that's going on with those kinds of ads. So we just have this tracking sheet. So every day we fill in the ad spend, how many followers that specific ad got us, and then obviously that calculates the cost per follow, inbound DMs, cost per DM, booked calls, cost per call, deals closed. So again, just having all the stats when it comes to ads, because as you know, if you don't know what's going on with your ads, it's going to be very difficult to kind of understand what's going on, which ads to double down on, which ads to kill, and kind of how to improve if you don't have any data, right? So this is essentially something that the setter comes in and fills out: how many followers, how many inbound DMs, how many calls he booked, and then from there, whatever happens afterwards, we fill in, kind of manually. So this is also manual. We have to put this in every day, just make sure everything is tracked. But again, we give reminders to the setter and everybody to make sure that they actually do fill this out. And then, we have the VSL. So this is pretty simple. We just put in the unique visitors. So we use Google Analytics. If you have a landing page, you would just put a code on your page. I'm not going to show you, but it's very simple. You can just look up on Google. You'll put a code on your page that would tell you how many visitors you get to that page. So, if 100 people click on your link, you will get 100 visitors to that page. So if you have 100 visitors and let's say you book, let's say 10 calls, you have a 10% conversion rate. That's probably a little bit crazy, but let's say you book 3 calls, you have a 3% conversion rate. So you're able to kind of understand, is the VSL actually performing? Or do I have like a very, very, very low percentage of conversion and I might need to change the headline or the video or whatever is going on the page, right? To make it more optimized for conversions and actually get people to book in a call. So that's it. And then, like I said, everything comes into here. So all the data with the ads, all the data with the setting, all the data with sales, all the data with the VSL. So we're able to kind of see what is actually happening. Where is the like kind of bottlenecks? Like, is it that people aren't replying? Is it that people aren't booking after we send the link? Do we have a low close rate? Do we have too many no-shows? What's the issue with the ads? Like the followers are too expensive. Nobody's booking in a call, for example. So we can kind of understand where to actually pinpoint and where to allocate essentially resources to fix those issues very effectively because all the numbers. So that's basically how we do it. We have all of these things in place to make sure that we are tracking the right numbers, updating the entire team, having everything like systemized and clean, and also just making sure that the stuff that is, or the stuff that can be automated is, automated and just kind of easy to use on a day-by-day basis so we don't waste everybody's time. So with that being said, let me show you some of these automations. Like I said, DM me on IG if you just want this document. I'll send it to you. It's literally all of our automations that we currently have and also some that we don't currently use, but I'm going to show you them anyway, right? So as you can see inside of here, this is an example of some automations that we have for our clients. So as you can see, I'm just going to open up a few of these. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail because it's just going to take too much time, but I'm going to show you kind of, the principles behind these things. Because it's honestly very, very simple. Okay, so I'm just going to show you some of these. As you can see here, there are a few steps on some of these. Some are a little bit more simple, some are a little bit more complex, but it's honestly very, easy to understand. Essentially what we do here, as you can see, we have a trigger and then we have a few different things that happens. And then, the automation basically ends with sending us the message on Discord again, right? You can use Slack, you can use whatever. You can even use WhatsApp. But again, Discord just makes it clean. You can create channels and everything, so everything is like segmented essentially. But as you can see here, invitee created. So whenever a person is created, so like when a new call is booked, when a new lead has essentially been added into Calendly, which only happens when, you know, a call is booked. Then you would filter by the condition. So the reason we have this is because if you have, let's say, 10 calendars on your Calendly, and you only want people to get into the CRM if they're booking on a specific, you know, calendar. So let's say you have one for sales calls, you have one for client check-ins. You only want the sales calls ones to show up inside of Calendly. So you filter by the calendar, right? So as you can see, the name contains, you know, whatever your calendar name contains. That is the sales calendar. And then we also do this because Calendly gives you like a very weird time. So we don't want this to show up inside of Discord and on the CRM because it's not going to make any sense. Like nobody can read this. It's very difficult to read. So we just take this input and then we format this into like a more easy to read, you know, essentially format. And then with that being said, we do the same with the, you know, the creation date. So like when they were booked and when the call is for. So this is for when the call is for, the scheduled time, and this is for when the lead was created, the booking time. And then what we do here is we add them into the CRM. Like I said, essentially we just add them into here with all the information from Calendly. And then from there, we send that information back to Discord as well with like, hey, we just booked a call, blah, 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 right? So that's essentially that automation. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. It's not like very complex. Same with the end of day reports. What we do, we just have every day at 8 p.m. We send the message with the end of day report, a reminder basically to the, to, you know, setters, closers, whatever, as you can see here. So every day at 8 p.m., you know, time to fill out the end of day reports. We send them the different links. So this is just, you know, we just type this into Zapier and this is being sent every day, the same message, just kind of like a reminder. And that's it. And then after they have, you know, submitted, we would have a, you know, end of day report. So when the form is submitted, it sends a message back to Discord with the information that was submitted. So essentially, Sam Setter end of day report has been submitted, new form response. It sends that information that he put in back into Zapier. So it's very simple. You just have to essentially kind of understand what you want to automate, and then you just put it into essentially like a workflow. So again, I'm not going to show you all of these, but you get the point. It's very simple. New payment, send a Discord message. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about how we set these up because it's all of them are basically the same. Like you know, like when you know the basics, you have a trigger, you do whatever you want to do, and then you end the workflow with, you know, usually sending a message to the team. Then it's pretty simple to set this up. So with that being said, again, if you want this, just DM me on IG. I hope that makes sense. That's essentially how we track all the numbers, make sure we are up to date with everything that is going on, and also how we basically make sure that the entire team is notified and we have like one central hub that, you know, everything gets back into. So yeah, that's the video. Subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao, ciao.